Sam, Damien, welcome to the Marketing for Business podcast.
Thank you.
Awesome to have you guys here, eh?
Cheers.
Mate, we're going to have a great conversation. Look, we've had some interesting discussions. Sam, I've known you for quite a while, and Damien met you recently. You guys are well, I guess, known around Christchurch and the scene for business brokering, understanding what it takes to sell a business, understanding what it takes to buy a business. So I think we're in an interesting time in the world and also in the economies, etc. So really interested to have that conversation. But you both come from totally different backgrounds.
We do.
So let's talk about that first, Damien. Let's go to you. You're have more of a sales and marketing focus in the business.
That's right.
Where did that passion come from?
I just like chatting to people, really.
Yep.
And worked for the government for a couple of years, and then jumped into a national sales role at quite a young age, which was pretty interesting. And then buggered off overseas for a couple of years, did some selling of services from the UK into Europe, which was good fun, and came back and again got into a national sales role for 10 years with Mitsubishi Electric. And they're a great company, really good, strong branding.
Yeah.
Back in the day, Black Diamond videos, those of us of an age will remember.
I used to sell a lot of those at Bond and Bond.
Of course, yeah. You were a client.
Yes, I used to love the Mitsubishi Black Diamond, the brand of it.
Yeah.
People would come in and they'd ask for it. One of those Black Diamonds. And
and that was pre-digital age really, and we used to just pump the hell out of TV advertising and press advertising. Yeah. And people would ask for the brand, and that's what you have to do. If you're a brand owner and you're selling through a lot of retailers, if you don't want to get held hostage by those big box retail, you've got to control the narrative around that. And Ron and Mitsubishi Electric did that very, very well. Yeah. And then I had 5 or 6 years in technology with a company up in Wellington called CityLink. We were selling fibre optic. We were selling internet connectivity on fibre before really the big telcos. We forced them to probably change their business model a little bit. Yep. So it was kind of, we were the Enable networks of Wellington about 10 years before Enable came along. Oh, wow. And it was really cool, stringing fibre around trolley bus wires. So cool.
And obviously selling that to people would have been kind of like, what is it? A new thing, right?
Oh, and the speeds and the access. And instead of being charged by the amount of traffic you were downloading, because that's kind of how it was. Suddenly we would just sign people up and they literally had a strand of fibre from point to point, big government departments with massive data requirements, and they might pay us, it might have been a few $100s or a couple of grand, but it was about a tenth of what they were probably charged by the big guys. And then the tobacco opportunity came up, and more sales, more relationships.
And we're going to talk about that because I'm going to see how we mould that together with Sam, who complete opposite. An accountant.
And how I met you, Scott.
Yes.
A long time
ago.
Exactly.
How did we meet?
That's an excellent question.
You were my accountant.
I was. How did we actually meet?
You don't remember.
How did we meet?
So it would have been either through a BNI or something like that, and right way.
Yes, potentially it was. Yeah. So look, I am an accountant, chartered accountant still. I didn't start off my career that way. I was in BCom from Lincoln, worked in call centres, as you do when you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, and ended up in banking in Aussie and Kiwi Bank Business Banking, Christchurch. And then I was in London, ended up working as a management accountant and thought, I'm going to have to follow in my father's footsteps and become an accountant. Yep. So I picked off the papers through Massey while I was there and became chartered and moved back to Christchurch just before the quakes, 2010. And the rest is history. Ernst & Young for a while, small practice, and then Right Way, of course. Yep. Did that for a few years, built up so yes, I'm an accounnt, but proved my sales ability.
I think that was one of the things I noticed.
You as a client, of course, so there you go.
I think that's what I noticed. You weren't just an accountant. You had a bit of, you had a bit of drive, and you had a bit of where you were going about you, which I think attracted, like-minded people, I guess, so you have that kind of background. Because, And one thing I noticed with you, Sam, you were always looking to look forward, where most accountants are always looking back. Not when I say most accountants, 95% of them.
They're all forward thinking now, Scott.
They're all advisors now. That's the key, aren't they? We love accountants, by the way, here on the podcast.
Yes. I remember when I was working for a small practice, and I was only sort of a year into working in private practice in New Zealand. And my boss, who was the owner, he had a plumber come in, and the plumber turns up in his filthy ute, and he had his blue overalls on, and we're doing the annual accounts review. And bear in mind, accounts are done for the March year. This was September, so 6 months down the line. Sat in this room, and the poor bloke, the poor plumber, I got on well with him. He walks on in, and my boss is there in his full suit, his very fancy suit, and it looked like the poor young plumber thought he was going into the principal's office. He walked in, and he sort of had his head down. And then, and then my boss sort of looked down, looked down at the numbers. Oh, yes. So this, you got this much tax to pay, and this, and you could just tell the plumber was like, "What have I got to pay? What's my tax? Send me a bill. Get me the hell out of here." And I'm like, we're talking about stuff that happened a year, 18 months ago. It's kind of irrelevant. What about what's happening now? And there was none of that chat. And I'm sitting there going, this isn't how it should be. And look, Right Way was a lot more forward thinking. There were monthly management meetings, and a lot of accountants do that now, and they do it very well. They're doing your forecasts, they're doing your cash flows, they're doing more business planning, which is really good. And that got me, I guess, more excited about business rather than accounting. You probably don't want me drafting a set of accounts anymore. I always got it right, but I always took shortcuts, and I always argue, but this saves the client money. It's immaterial, those changes. Oh, no, it's got to be perfect. Use the right colour pen in the notes and everything, change that, and we'll charge a client another $100. And I was sitting there thinking, well, what's the point? Where's the value to the client? But
and to be fair, software changed that industry too, right?
Yes,
like
100%.
The disruptor came in big time,
really did,
and has kind of leveled up the ground, I guess, for everyone being better, to some degree, which
you can't just make money on compliance anymore. You need to look at growth and advisory services. Absolutely.
So Damien, you've been in with Tabak in business brokering for how many years now?
19
years,
coming up 20.
20.
And Sam, you've been to get in there.
I'm just gone 7.
So what a wealth of experience. But when you look at the 2 years together, one of the things I love having conversation with you both is you both bounce off each other really, really well. You've got the sales and marketing background, you've got a little bit of it, but you've also got that, accountancy kind of hat on. And I think that kind of makes you stand out in the marketplace when what I like having is real business conversations with people, and you definitely get that a lot with you two. 19 years though, Damien, coming on 20. I asked you when we...
Don't look at me like that.
I asked you when we first met, because one of the things people say to me all the time, there's people are going to be selling their businesses, and there's going to be great opportunities because people are getting older. But you kind of disagreed with that philosophy. So let's talk a wee bit more about that, because I think there'll be people here that think like that, but there's other actually opportunities around it.
Look, Scott, I continue to hope with all my heart that you're correct. But to be honest, I got into this 20 years ago thinking exactly the same. I'm a late boomer, but it was like, people like me over the next 15, 20 years are going to be looking to exit. And don't get me wrong, up to half of our clients are people looking to retire, but only up to half. And we've never seen that tsunami. And part of the reason is that business and economics are constantly changing. And when perhaps in Christchurch, people might have been expecting to think about, I'll start to put my feet up, I'll get succession planning. Bang, we had the earthquake. Well, actually, we had the GFC.
True.
And that really did knock a lot of businesses, profit-wise, and the energy required. And of course, if you've got 2 years or 3 years of modest performance, the way it works, take a profit figure, multiply it to get a value. Well, they were having to sell themselves short if they left. So they said, no, we'll just wait. And then bang, bang, earthquakes in Canterbury. And then the rebuild, as those of us we were all here at the time, it took forever, really, to get up and going. It was 2, 3, 4 years before we really started to fire. I remember 2015, 2016, Christchurch was one of the worst places to live. The students didn't want to come here. No. Hey, we're another 10 years down the track, and that's turned all the way around. So, there was always been barriers to people looking to exit. And then just as they were starting to come right, bang, we've got COVID. So, look, is there going to be a tsunami? I would love to think so, but I have to say I have a healthy scepticism that that's going to happen.
See that you raise an interesting point, though. So you're having a business and you have an eye on maybe doing something as far as looking to sell. It raises an interesting point. How long out should be you looking at as a business owner? Because no one knew all these things were going to come along, right? If we had all had a crystal ball, we would have put your business on the market in 2006, 2007, right?
Sure. Oh, exactly.
So do you give yourself a timeline when you're looking to sell?
Look, I think it just differs very much from business to business to business, and what drives their decision to sell.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's health.
True.
Sometimes it's the personal situation or a marital breakup. Sometimes they just get another interest and passion in their lives, and the core business kind of just sits there almost stalling. So they think, well, let's get rid of that. I mean, the right answer is yes, you should be preparing your business for sale from the moment you start it. That is the textbook answer. Yeah. But in reality, we're not like that. No. All I would suggest is, yes, at least have the basics. Have your good solid general ledger package, whether it's Xero or MYOB or Reckon or whatever. So know your numbers, or at least get advice from an accountant to know your numbers. Know what drives your business, and don't be the bottleneck. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if you are your business, you've got nothing to sell. I was chatting to a mate who's got a tree/landscaping business up in the North Island. And he said, oh, look, I'm going to sell the business. What's it worth? And we chatted about it. And I said, look, Darryl, at the end of the day, you haven't got anything to sell. You've got some assets. You flog those if you want, but you are the guy. You are the rainmaker. You are the technical guy who is doing all of this work. Yeah. Until such time as you get 2 or 3 people who can do that stuff, and you can just conduct that orchestra. Yeah. Yes, that's going to cost you a lot of investment, and you might have a couple of years where all you're doing is growing the business to pay those people. But until you can do that and consistently then make a profit, you've got a job. Yes. It's your own job, and that's fantastic. Yeah. And I would recommend people still always have a view to doing your own thing, because it does give a lot of flexibility, which Sam might touch on a bit later. But yeah.
How does that conversation land? Because you have that conversation quite a bit, right?
Yeah, we do. We do. Look, we can't move forward with half of what we look at, Scott. And that is not because we don't like people or we don't like the business. It's simply they're in a position that unless you're a fully qualified plumber, you're only going to, and then you want to buy someone else's plumbing businesses. If they're a man in a van or a woman in a van, and you just step into their shoes, well, yeah, you could buy them, but why wouldn't you just start your own? I mean, it's so
exactly.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that we do have to sometimes break the not so good news to the indoors. But the upside of that is we occasionally surprise positively as well. Yeah. And there's always the trade sale option. And we've certainly sold a number of businesses to buyers.
Do you think it's kind of seen as a bit of a, build a business and sell it? Is it kind of a badge that people want to wear?
It's what people seem to think. The reality is, if something's making you $100,000 a year, and you're thinking you can get, the magical 3 times, which isn't quite right. Who's going to want to get it, to increase their mortgage potentially by $300,000 to earn $100K a year, which they could get in a day job, which is 9 to 5, no stress, no fuss, no stuff. Go home at 5 and see your kids. That's the reality with those smaller businesses. And just touching on what you guys were talking about before, this is the sort of things you talk about as an accountant and as a business broker, that to get sale ready, you want to make sure you're constantly increasing your revenue, constantly increasing your margin, constantly increasing your profit, and distancing yourself from the business. Yeah. Why wouldn't you be doing that from day one? Yeah. Because you're making more money, and you've got more time to spend with your family, and you're not working 60 hours a week. So you should be doing these things anyway, and every advisor worth their salt should actually be advising you to do the same. Yeah. But while you're doing that, you're increasing the value of the business. At the same time, you're enjoying. You might find that you love your business again too, and that's great. Yeah. But it's just they're the core things to work on, and why wouldn't you be working on that regardless of whether you want to sell or not? Yeah.
Yeah, because it gives you, that peace of mind too, right? Like, absolutely. And I think also, I have this conversation running in my head all the time, but I love what I do. But I also love having other people love what they do, working for me, and it's not just for me. We work for our clients at the end of the day. But I had an interesting conversation was in the States recently with some guys that exited a business, right? They had a roofing marketing to roofers, and they exited, and they had to do a wee bit of a earn out, and then all of a sudden, I met them a year later, and they were fully out. And you could tell the life had been sucked out of them because
lost their purpose.
They had their money, but there was no like especially one guy, and you could just tell he was kind of lost, and I had to chat to him about it, and he was like, oh, I went there every day, I did this, I was this.
This is what they did.
People knew who I was, and then we did the podcast, and I was this, and I was this, and and all of a sudden selling the business, like I think he'll get over it. He got a decent amount of money, but you could just tell, like sometimes you don't prepare, you don't even think about that. You just think, oh, I'm going to sell the business. And
I think the danger, Scott, particularly with guys, is we are defined by what we do.
Yes.
And I guess the classic model is the guy is the breadwinner, and I know that's changing constantly, and which is great. But that old-fashioned thinking, particularly for the baby boomer generation, is once you remove that purpose from their lives, or once they're off that pedestal of being the boss, it's like, well, I'm just Joe Bloggs, and I think they do need to mentally prepare for that, or at least think that about what they might do to counteract that, because it's a very real concern. The upside is most owners, when we go back and have a chat to them, because we do stay in touch, most of them, and even if they had a week, they got a bit burnt on value or whatever, for whatever reason, we go back to them 6 or 12 months later, they will say, best thing I ever did. But I had one gentleman, and he regretted selling. He said, I sold 2 or 3 years too early. And, that's
hindsight, though. Isn't
it? Well, that's, hindsight's
It's about that purpose, right? You got to have, I believe everybody has to have a purpose. You have to have a reason to wake up in the morning and something to keep you going. The Japanese call it ikigai. That's it's all about, and that's why they live a lot longer than us. They have a reason to go to bed. It could be their garden, it could be volunteering, it could be running a business. As soon as you lose that, you lose your purpose, you lose your identity. And then they wake up and I've had vendors come back and the wife's getting angry because they're hanging around the house. They're playing golf on Ladies' Day because they've got nothing to do. There's only so much golf you can do, and so they come back to me and go, I wouldn't mind buying just something small because and I've got so much knowledge up here, and for it to just stop. The brain's a muscle. You kind of need to keep using it, and so they just miss that identity, miss that purpose, miss having a reason to get out. And there are stressful days, and that's probably what brings them to us in the first place. But all in all, they look back and go, actually, that was me. It's tough for them.
I watched something really cool the other day, and I want to challenge you guys because I think you guys are part of this. Magic Johnson, he got asked. He asked he must have asked a mentor about, who do I get around me? And he says, Magic Johnson said, I want to be the greatest basketball player ever. So the guy said, well, you need to get the best accountants, the best lawyers, and the best working for you. And I really believe that too. So if I was going to sell a business, I want you guys to do it because I see you guys as the best. And I think when you look at maximizing an asset that you've put your life and soul into and your purpose, etc. Let's talk about that. How do I, as a business owner, because there'll be business owners listening to this going, man, I want to sell, and I don't, I'm kind of thinking about it. My brain started to think about it. I don't want to get to the point where I'm having to sell. Where does someone go to get educated about that, and how do you guys help people? Because at the end of the day, I find this really interesting. You guys are brokers. You work for free until you sell. Until you sell, you do, right? That's
sometimes we work for free until we sell, and it still is free. So it doesn't just sell.
Which I think in as itself is pretty, like, you've got to know what you're doing to be able to do that. And you don't, as you say, you don't take on everyone. But where do I start? Where do you start looking?
Look, in my view, Scott, and in my experience, you need to have a chat to your accountant. You need to have a chat to your solicitor. If you've got a business coach. Now, most don't, but if you've got a business coach, you have a chat to them. Because these are conversations, those advisors will be involved in a sale, either early or later. So best you get them involved early. They may have their own views, and then you need to approach a trusted business broker, maybe get recommendations or referrals, and go to someone who has got a track record, who can show you testimonials, who's got the supporting data around their success rates, etc. Talk to them about what it is they do, what your business might be worth, and then literally, if it was to back, we would just step them through a process, and it's an obligation-free process. up to a point where we say, look, we think your business is worth X, we like it, we would love to take it to market, and we'll validate our valuation with market data and what have you, because we've got a lot of that market.
So it's similar to what a real estate agent would do, right? They
look at
the comms in the area and go.
We're governed by real estate law.
Same process, same rules.
Yeah, we're governed by real estate law. I argue that tobacco is no different to your lawyer or your accountant or your digital advertising advisor. We just get paid differently.
Yes.
We don't have an hourly rate ticking, which is a bit sad, but that's life. For people who are thinking of where's my first step, and we talk to a lot of people like this, and often they're recommended by their accountant. And because they know that if they come to Sam or myself, there'll be no BS. It'll be, this is where you are, this is what you've got, this is what you need to do. If you're not saleable today, and we will tell people that. If you're not saleable today or in the next 12 months, we'll say, look, these are the things you need to do. We won't necessarily tell them how to do it. We don't want to be an accountant or a business coach, but we'll say, these are the things that you need to do.
And you guys can look at a business and see what are the things, just from your experience now, you kind of know, what are some of the things that people need to do? Like, what are some of the kind of generic things that most businesses need to do? I mean, you talked about having a general ledger before. And
the key, I think, for all businesses is the working owner. And look, Damien and I have been doing this long enough that if we look at a business owner in the eye and go, how many hours do you work a week? And they go 30. We know if they're lying. We can tell. They look tired. They're not working 30. They're working 60. And look, we can't call them on that. We take them on face value on what they say. But then that's up to the buyer under due diligence. And we might even say to the buyer, you just, because we're pretty honest, you might just want to really make sure you sit down with the vendor and work out what he does day to day. Because a lot of them, they might, in their head, they might actually think it is 30. And they think that working at night and getting up at 4 a.m. is actually under those 30 hours. But the reality is it's not. So anything you can do to delegate, to distance yourself from the business. I always say, could you go away for 2 weeks to Fiji tomorrow? And would the business continue without you? And the answer is either yes, I did that last month, great, or the answer is, geez, no, because everything comes to my phone. I approve all invoices, and they're almost proud of that fact. That's awesome, but that's not something to be proud of, because a buyer is going to have huge issues with you wanting to leave. So that's probably the key to work on, and that can take 6 months, that can be a year. It can be very hard for these owners to let go. They're used to it being that every client rings them and they really enjoy that. That's also why they're working 60 hours a week, because they're dealing. So what can you do to upskill your staff? And the reality is, you upskill your staff, one of those staff members could be the ideal successor for your business. Puts us out of business, but if it's the ideal solution, they could buy you out over time. You need to always be looking inside the business first, because that's somebody who knows your business inside out. It'll be an ideal solution for you. And that's a question we always ask when we meet people as well.
We do, It's, is there anyone internally that can take it on, succession planning? Absolutely. I think the 2 weeks holiday in Fiji or Australia or wherever is a good analogy. And look, if you go away for a couple of weeks and you have to log in to pay wages and clear a couple of emails, that's normal. We are all business owners. And I probably wouldn't be working 40 hours a week, 9 to 5, but you never stop thinking about your business. But that's not a bad thing. It's not like we're being paid an hourly rate and then we keep thinking about the business and we're not getting paid that rate. It's just what we do. If you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And I know that's hackneyed, but it is an absolute fact.
Preaching. I believe it. Like if you love what you do and you're good at what you do, you don't actually work. It's not like you enjoy it, you get value, and you add value. So
correct.
I think it's someone's working 60 hours, but not liking what they're doing, and
Well, it's too long, because you get tired, and it grinds you down, and that's not good.
No, exactly. I think also it's an interesting, not working in the business. If you say you're doing 30, but you're actually doing 60. But the reason, obviously, for saying 30 is you're obviously trying to maximise the value of the business.
You're trying to say, it's pretty much part time for me, but. They know. And look, to be honest, that's a very small minority. Most people are honest. I've got some vendors now who I go, I'm working 60 to 70. That's the actual reason I want to look at exit options. Could I work in with somebody who comes in and buys half, helps me run the office function because I'm not that great at it? I'd love to actually be out with the staff on the tools, because then my staff attrition rate will drop and will be more efficient, and it's a win-win. and he's put his hand up and he's been straight up with me. He's in there Saturdays, he's in there till 7 p.m. And look, most vendors we deal with are very genuine and honest with us. We can see straight away within about, what do they say, the first 30 seconds of meeting someone, we kind of know when we meet someone that perhaps may be a bit shady and we won't work with them.
Okay, so you're on the road to making your business sellable. You're going to work your way out of the business, so that revolves around delegation and preparing. What else would be something else that you need to be looking at?
Coming back to systems, and it's part of the removing yourself one step. If it's a trades business, unless there's an emergency, you don't want to be the guy on the shovel or on the tools. And if you've got a really nice quoting package, there's a lot of them out there now that are pretty cost effective. If you've got as I said before, general ledger, so invoicing's easy. You might do a quote, and then that just with zero bangs out as an invoice. Away you go. We're still seeing occasional businesses where a quote is written out on a slip of paper, and then it becomes a good quality product or service. But then they have to handwrite the invoice, and it's very old school, but they're still out there. And the best thing about those businesses, if you're buying them, it's not that difficult to really add some value and improve your productivity. So look, systems is a biggie. If you've got a lot of stock, keep it current. Write down stock if it loses its value. One of the things that we were chatting about this morning is most important distribution or import direct sales businesses. We talk to the owners. What's your bad stock like? Have you got slow stock? What has to be written down? 9 times out of 10. Whether they believe it or not, no, we're good. But actually, when you get the reports, here's 50 grand's worth of stock that you bought 2 years ago that hasn't moved. Oops. You're not going to pay for that.
No one's paying for that.
No, exactly.
What I like about those conversations is they actually really play out too. I was talking to a gentleman this morning having a coffee, and he would give a scenario. He has a bike, right? And he normally goes to this bike shop, but they were writing out what he needed to do, and he felt a bit frustrated by that for the first time. And and then he went to another company, and the other company had told him what he needed to do and emailed it to him with an itemized. And he just felt that right now this company is doing it a better way, even though he's gone to this company. He kind of it started to feel a little bit like, do they really like they weren't being proactive in saying what he needs with his bike. He's had electric bikes, but obviously being 5 years, where this company is now being more proactive. And I was just like, wow, which business is more valuable now?
Exactly.
Correct.
And so there's actually things that can make your business more valuable, which is kind of what you're talking about. This is a real example of that just this morning. I think the stock thing's an interesting one too, right? Because I think fresh eyes tells a business a lot. You guys will go in there with fresh eyes, and you'll be like, and where probably the person doesn't see it, right?
No.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Or I guess they're just used to it, and there's a certain inertia there. And it's like, I remember from my Mitsubishi days, one of the brands we had, well, in fact, all the brands we brought into the country, every 12 months we had to have a scratch and dent sale as a wholesaler to just keep that, or we need to poke it through our retailers and say, hey, here's 20% off these because it's last season's model or it's 2 years ago, and you need to discount it to sell it. Every year you had to stay on top of that. I remember our product managers 20 years ago, the boss was cracking the whip and saying, what are you doing about your bad stock? So this isn't a new concept.
No. Well, I think some business owners, though, it's almost admitting defeat that I purchased this stock and I couldn't sell it. So writing it off, despite the fact they write it off, they get a bit of a tax incentive, a tax break. It might affect their margins a wee bit, but you can easily explain that if they're selling. But it's almost like, I chose that stock because I thought it was going to sell, and it didn't sell after 3 years. So they still keep it in there because then they might sell one of them and go, look, it's researched. It's like, no, has it? You're lucky there. So it's just admitting defeat, and business owners are proud people. They don't want to admit that. But then I've met a business owner that imports product, and every month he goes through and writes stock off, or he keeps it and actually gives it away with other purchases. And so his stock is the tidiest stock I've ever seen. Nice. You know that everything he has, and he's got everything on vend, is 100% saleable at well more than cost. And it's like, I don't need to go through it with him because I know.
That's awesome.
He's a very switched on guy.
And so you guys are business brokers, but to me it sounds like you own, I guess, the trusted advisor part of it more than most, right? Would that be a fair assessment?
We never want to step on accountant's shoes.
No,
because I always say they are. Sometimes it's a lawyer, but generally the accountant is or should be the trusted advisor.
Okay.
But going back to what we were talking about before, is when we're introduced to a business owner. Quite often, we may encourage, or they may already have another broker from another competing firm that they're speaking to.
Yep.
And I actually encourage it. I said, look, we all have very different approaches.
Yep.
And everybody gets on with different people differently.
Nice.
I said, what you need to know, and look, I can proudly say that I don't think I've ever lost one to another broker in 7 years, which is great. I'm sure it'll happen. However, I encourage them to go and chat to somebody else because you're going to be very, very close to this person. There might become a time where you're negotiating where you might have 1, 2, 3, 8 phone calls a day with this person, and you really need to get on with them. You want when they ring, you want to go, oh yeah, look, it's Sam calling it. Happy to have a chat. We'll have a bit of a laugh. If you're like, oh, is that person calling again? Well, actually, the person's calling because they're trying to sell your business.
Yeah.
So you've got to really get on with this person. You're going to spend more time with them than you would your accountant probably in the last 3 or 4 years with your banker. It's really important. So if there's no connection, and if they connected with another broker elsewhere, that's okay, because it's what's best for the vendor at the end of the day. And you're working. I sold some preschools, some ECEs, and I'd never sold a preschool before in my life, and this was a chain of 3 of them. And I met the owners, and I was actually pitching against the best preschool broker in the country. She was based in Tauranga. And I was honest with them. I said, look, I've never sold a preschool before, so I'm going to give myself a crash course, but I know how to sell a business, and this is quite large. You're going to have a different caliber of buyers. And, the owner was one of the vendors. He was an ex-builder. He was a bit of a hard bloke, and he just goes, mate, you're it. You turned up when you said you're going to turn up. You answered the phone. You had a space with me at 11:30 in the morning. He goes, done. And even at the end, I'm like, thanks so much, Sam, because I'd call, can I meet you tomorrow at 7? We've got to run through this. Yeah, no dramas. I'll be there. Perfect. So just simple stuff.
People.
I'll come back on that trusted advisor within the sale process. 100% we are. We get a lot of very, very nice things said about us with testimonials. Once we go through the process, a vendor, particularly again older gentlemen, will tend to think, oh, you're just a bloody real estate agent. It is what it is. But that's how we get paid. But I guarantee you, by the time we're at the end of this program in 3 or 5 or 6 months, there'll be an appreciation and an understanding of the value that we can bring. And I think there virtually always is. There really is. And we've got the testimonials to show for it. So, I think we do. I mean, like Sam, I've gone to some introductory meetings and the vendor was quite closed, and they've been introduced by their accountant, say, and they might be stacking us up against another broker or brokers, and they're kind of hard to get them out of their shell. By the time the 3rd meeting rolls around, everything's open, everything's very,
They trust you, right?
They do. And so, we're not trying to replace the accountant. We're just the +1. Would you like fries with that? Well, actually, yes. And we can, Shivers, 20 years experience, 700 sales across the country in that time, if not more, $650 million worth of turnover. It's,
the proof's there, right?
The proof is there. And, it's hard to not sound like I'm boasting, but at the end of the day, you got to be proud of what you can do and how you do it.
Totally. And I think you should be, right? Like, you don't get to that level without, having a few failures to some degree, but also writing a few successes. And we're going to talk about the war stories and the successes in a minute. But what I want to know is, like, so what should someone be asking you when they're looking at selling their business and they're looking to interview? What would a good conversation be like? Because I think it's an interesting one. It's like, when you go to sell your house, do you really know what to say? When you go to sell your business, what is it that you should be asking a broker to get like the best result for you as a business owner?
Really good question. There's a couple of things. I think, touch on Sam's point. Some of it will revolve around just how comfortable you feel with that broker in their company and with their level of just how you gel as personality types. It is quite important. But the key...
On that note, I sold a business, and my business partner at the time, we went to a business broker meeting, and the business broker rang me back and said, do you want to sell this business? I said yes. He goes, never bring that guy to another meeting.
I've done that before too.
Just because they didn't gel, right? And that's just the way it was. But I had to then go and tell the business partner at the time that, hey, you can't come to another meeting. If you're listening to this, that was true.
So personality is important. But look, at the end of the day, it's about... it's about results, right? We if you're going to go to the, I guess, take the big jump of putting your business on the market, you want it sold.
Yeah.
So, what I'd be asking if I was in those shoes, a broker, is what's your success rate?
Yeah.
What's your experience with these types of businesses when they produce the valuation or the appraisal of value? What have you based that on?
Yeah.
What other businesses have you looked at when you've come to your analysis? And this is all relatively bog standard stuff. So they are all the questions that I would be asking.
Yeah. And do you look at, like, are there just common things inside a business, obviously, to get that valuation and stuff? So you kind of know as soon as you've had that conversation what it's going to look like. But I'm still in the dark, right?
Yep.
Like, I'm still going, you guys probably kind of know. It's kind of like when we meet someone with the marketing, we can kind of see what's playing to play out. It's like a symphony. I can see it playing out. But you guys would still be in the dark, right? And I think that's on the other side. So how do you make, obviously, results and stuff makes people feel confident, but what's that process like to get people to go, going to choose you? Is it just rapport, just meetings? Like, how do you...
I think it's validating what you're saying, what you're telling people. And when you've got that experience, I mean, Sam and I, every week, we catch up at least once a week, sometimes twice, because we work from home offices. But we catch up and we talk about all of the stuff we've got on the go. And we talk about the appraisals we're doing that week. And we're bouncing ideas around. And sometimes I'm heavily reliant on Sam's accounting background and skill set. There's other times I might have got more experience in a particular industry. And so I can pile in there.
Yeah.
And there have been times where I say to Sam, I think you're too bullish. Or I think you're too bearish, and there's times he'll pick me up on that.
Is that on pricing, on what you think that
value is probably the biggest part. What multiple can we get? Because at the end of the day, we want to optimise the vendor's outcome. But we also want to sell the business. So, and the vendor does. Our obligations are to the vendor, but we kind of walk a bit of a middle line because we also know what the buyers are going to be hitting us with. So and you're right. I mean, we something simple like an automotive workshop or whatever, Sam and I could just look at the numbers and instantly say, it's going to be about that.
And does, like in most business owners over your experience, are they quite realistic around what their business is worth, or are they just like, because I'm thinking my house is worth this, and then I go to the auction.
We're all over optimistic. Exactly.
There's not a conversation you haven't had that your house is worth more, and is your business worth more. Like, how do you judge that? Like,
I would say sometimes it's the smaller businesses that are the ones who are a little bit more over-optimistic, and that can simply be from bad advice from an accountant who maybe doesn't quite know so much, and they just do the magic, that's worth 3 times. And the first question is, what 3 times what? What are we actually multiplying? Which is the key thing, whether it's full owner income or whether it's managed profit. And then when we're looking at COVID, when profit was sort of like this, then it's not actually the multiple that matters, it's what is the earnings, underlying earnings, what's the future maintainable earnings in there. And that has a huge impact on the value.
So you have to educate someone on that?
Yes, of course, very much.
And how does that conversation go if the accountant is not up to speed then? Because or have you educated the accountants on what a...
I'll answer the first part. Maybe Sam could talk to the second part. Look, there is an element, and this is where the kind of trust is earned as well. So we talk about where we see the value, and we talk about why we see the value. And as I said before, we try to validate that with, here's the data. Now, some owners, actually particularly down south, are pretty tough. Some of them will just say, no, my accountant said this, or my banker said that, or my lawyer said this. You don't know what you're talking about. Fine. We respectfully walk away. Occasionally it works in reverse. We'll go back and say it's worth this. And the vendor was like, really?
Are you sure?
Look, and in one case we were doing a valuation and the guy said, great, really appreciate that. And if he would go to market, that's what we'll go to market at. But he was selling it internally. He adopted a price which was 100K less because he was selling it to an important person in their business. And I fully respect that. And it was never going to be a listing for us, unless for whatever reason they decided not to buy. And he came back to me probably 6 weeks after that and said he was he was relieved, he was happy, he was delighted that the transaction had all come together really well. And we paid a small part in that, not a big part in that, but we sold him the business 15 years ago. So it was lovely to see that transition. And when the person that's bought the business in 15 or 20 years when they want to sell. Sam will sell it for them because I probably won't be around. But,
Yes, you will.
You're on the beach.
Yes, you will. Yeah.
CG.
Look, we're polite, we're respectful, we tell it how we think it is, how we believe it to be, and then most vendors will be respectful enough to actually they have to take a step back and then think about their options. Often they'll come back to us and say, fair enough, you're straight up, we'll move forward. Sometimes they'll say, no, we're going to try someone else. And sometimes, no, it's not enough, I need to keep chunking away at it. Yeah. That's fine. But in terms of the accountants, training accountants, as it were, around there.
And I love accountants, of course I am one, and look, they are our biggest referral source. Probably the biggest challenge that we have, and I'm not saying that I've done this once or twice in my time as an accountant, if a business is worth $1 million, the accountant working for the vendor will say it's worth 1.2.
Yep.
That same accountant, if they're working for a buyer, would say that it's worth 800.
Yes.
And that is a huge challenge.
True,
and
right?
accountants know they do it. They laugh. They think it's hilarious. We don't. We don't laugh at all.
Yeah.
Because what they're doing is almost a disservice to if they're almost telling their client, walk away unless you can get it for 800 grand. Walk away. Someone else buys the business for $1 million because that's what we appraised it at, and we're usually within 5% of that value. Someone's bought an absolute cracker. And their client is then sitting there going, "Damn, I wish I had that business." So they've got to be very careful. I understand being bullish,
point, right?
And they're working. They have the best interests in their mind for their client, and I completely understand that. They've just got to be careful. If they've got a client that loves this business, they get on so well with the vendor, everything's going great, they're happy with that value. Don't tank it. Support your client. And just do due diligence 100%. We're not saying don't. And again, when an offer is made and we've got pen on paper for $1 million, due diligence is for the accountant and the buyer and the lawyer to go through all the information that we presented to make sure it's accurate. It is not a time for the buyer and their accountant to try and screw that price down for no reason. What they put on paper, that's the value based on what we've given. Unless there's something material we've missed, fair enough. But we do have some accountants that will go, right, DD, let's get it off the market. DD, we're going to screw that price down. The vendor's just going to walk away with my encouragement. We'll find another buyer at $1 million.
And that's one of the things that's what I'm kind of interested in, was how does it then the negotiating side, like did people just try and go down on you? But if you've set a value, it's pretty close to what you know is worth, right? And, and what someone will buy you for it. So how does it's interesting to see here, because it's not like a house where people can it's
a house is bricks and mortar. A business is 60, 70, 80% intangibles.
Lots of moving parts.
Goodwill. So you can really, if you upset a vendor and you're the buyer and you're reliant on them for 4 or 5 weeks after the sale, you don't want to get their backs up because you don't want to overpay.
No.
That's where we come in as well. It's like, actually, Tabak, who are a third party to this, have put a value on this. That's what they think they can get. Over 20 years, their data says, well, we get within 5% of where we value the business at. That's data. That is history. That's there. So it's like, I probably summarise it as a sale needs to be win-win. It can't be win-lose.
Yes.
If it's a win-lose, someone's getting shafted. Either the buyer or the vendor, and that's not good. Again, that's part of our job is to ensure that it gets through okay. And look, there have been times when all three of us are a bit sore after a deal because the vendor's taken an offer they really thought was a wee bit cheeky. The buyers paid a bit more than they really wanted to pay, and we might have helped to bridge the gap by taking a bit of a kick as well. And
Don't say that.
I know it's not often. It's not often, but sometimes you just say to all three parties, guys, it's normally the bigger stuff. Look, we'll take a bit of a hit here because this is a transaction that should happen.
Exactly.
And I'm prepared to put my skin in the game to try and get
that.
And
maybe if we don't think that there's going to be another buyer out there in the background, if we think this buyer is the real deal, they are the perfect fit for the business. And we'll be honest, we are a business, we need to make money. If we think it's going to be another 6 months, a year, or never that we find another buyer of that caliber, we will do what we need to do. But if we think we could sell it again, then obviously no, we go back to market. But if we think it's right there, and sometimes it can be a $1 million business and they're haggling over 10 grand. And I remember once I had 13 phone calls back and forth within about a 15-minute. This is an $800K business, and it was $5,000 difference.
Wow.
It's like, for the love of goodness, can just guys take a step back. And I think they just all got the pride kicked in. It was two blokes, the pride kicked in. And then they kind of realised, hang on a minute, what the heck is a big deal? This is a business making $350,000 a year. It's growing. And then they just actually, sorry, that was, they just get, I guess, caught up in the weeds. So our job is to say, take a step back, look at the forest that you're buying, look at this awesome lifestyle, look at the reasons why you looked at that, talk to your wife who really loves the business too, and then look, actually, it's.
I think in negotiating some people, you need a bridge between
100%.
Right?
Yes, most people
too emotional.
Yes.
Yes. Do you recommend? Do you look at businesses and you can see, hey, the business owner is leaving a bit on the upside, like, and when selling a business, like, how does that all, like, how would you position or talk to a business owner about that? Because I really believe you should leave an upside. Like, if you leave a bit more on the deal, like, you get a better deal going.
Yeah, I guess we kind of call it leaving a bit of salt on the bread.
Okay.
And that's where the win-win comes in.
Yeah.
And certainly a number of our vendors can talk to us about genuine opportunities, things that they wouldn't do because it might be more of a digital person's strategy, but they think there's benefit to be gained, or a market that they haven't jumped into because frankly they're tired and they just don't want to commit the resource required to get into that, but they think that'll be a good option as well. So if there is some salt on the bread for the buyer, fantastic. Where it becomes win-lose, you've got one of those vendors who literally just wants it all their own way. And that's where we are less inclined to engage.
Yeah. And you pick that up from the start, like, you can kind of tell.
Pretty much. Yeah.
They're usually the ones that ask me what it's worth in their first meeting within 25 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, don't ask Sam that question.
I'll get back to you. By law, we need to give an appraisal in writing, and we will.
Well, it's like, how do you give someone a price on their business in 25 minutes? Right?
And there's so many, and we have so many questions we have, and we document everything. We need to do everything by the book. We may know in that 25, we probably do.
Yeah. We're
probably thinking, that's actually, quite what you get to know. That'll be between 1.2 and 1.3. We actually know, but we're not going to say it to somebody in case there's something that missed, and we give them a bit of false information. So. Yeah, we know. They do ask, and I'd say, look, I'll get back to you.
Because once the number's in there, it's very hard to get it out.
That's exactly right.
And if an initial response is too high,
and it's like when you hear my house is worth, maybe it's worth $1 million too. What did you hear? You heard $1 million too. You didn't hear $1 million.
That's exactly right.
You've only heard $1 million too, right?
And if they hear that from their accountant or from maybe another broker or their mate at the pub, that's the number in their head, and they're retiring on that number. The problem is they then start taking their foot off the throttle because they think the business is sold.
Yeah.
I just want to say we love accountants too. Most of them are amazing.
Yeah.
And they do a great job for their vendors and for the buyers. DD. Most of them see the business. They see the passion that their clients have to buy this business, and they want to make sure they just want to protect their client to make sure that they're covered. But most are pretty happy with our values. All in all, you just might get the odd one that just likes to play broker.
I think you wouldn't be in business this long if they weren't right.
Absolutely.
Like success leaves clues.
Yeah.
One of the things I really like talking to you guys about is you guys have passion for business owners. Where does this come from? Like, where did it come from?
Crikey.
Jeez, yeah.
Well, I guess at the end of the day, here's a wee anecdote. For my 40th birthday, had a party up in Eastbourne at the Pavilion in Days Bay. It was a great party, and there was a theme. My wife always has themes. And the theme for my 40th was a nerds party. And why? Because
you wouldn't have had to dress up, Damien.
Good on you. Why? Because, I was a bit academic at school, but mostly it was about, I just hoovered up anything to do with business.
Yeah.
I just enjoy that environment. And through all of the different jobs I did as a salaried person, that was kind of just part of what I did and how I could potentially gain a knowledge base and maybe add some value. And so the Nerds Party it's just a good example for, I just get into that stuff,
That's cool.
And it is fun. And other people would look at it and they'd go, cold, they'd rather read a book, but,
You learn a lot talking to business owners, right? Like it's a.
So every week, every fortnight, we're doing 101 on a new industry potentially. And that's the fun. So we've got to be inquisitive. And you've had it much more than I have because, when you had your book of accounting fees, you'd have probably had hundreds of clients, I don't know. But it is cool. It's just you're learning new stuff every day. And as you said, the brain's a muscle. If you're not exercising it,
shrinks.
I remember my mum and dad split up, and money was never really talked about in our family. Dad was a freezing worker, 47 years. Mum was stay at home, and I always remember this. They always talked about business owners being greedy and all this sort of stuff. And I did have no other reference. My granddad was a very successful farmer, had 2 farms, but unfortunately got hit on the head and passed away. So we had no real reference of business owners in our family, and so we just used to hear all this stuff about business owners. And then I worked in the corporate world, and all of a sudden, both me and my brother found ourselves in business. And I started meeting, and I vividly remember going to this meeting and having dinner with these 2 business owners. And I left and I was like, said to my partner at the time, was now my wife, said, what do these guys want from us? Because I just couldn't believe how friendly they were, and how nice they were,
90% plus,
and how generous they were and stuff. And I was like, I just couldn't. I know this was going against all my beliefs that I had growing up, because business owners were this, business owners were that, and I had to do a real deep dive on myself around who I was and how I was, especially even around money and stuff, and how do I show up in my business. And I tell you what, when I did, it was a complete change of how I have grown my business, etc. But it was really interesting at the time. Like I didn't have any references around business owners, but now I just love dealing with business owners.
And once you get into business, I mean, I don't think I'm ever would be employable again for the rest of my life. And
what do you reckon, Damien?
Yeah, he's right. He's right. Like I'm not his employee. But no. Like my father was an accountant. He passed away when I was young, but he was a partner at 30. So when I went through school, I got a D in accounting in 5th form purposefully, and said I'll never want to be an accountant again.
Wow.
And my wife,
I got a D, but it wasn't on purpose.
Oh yeah, well no, I just was like, oh, accounting, no way, I'm not going to be like my dad.
Wow.
It was in my blood, and I still avoided after uni, got a BCom and worked in business banking for years, and then I just ended up, I couldn't help it, and my mum literally said, I told you so. And that was accounting, but then that was still a 9-to-5 grind, and that's now not me. I don't think I could ever do that again. No. Now doing what I do, and the fact being a business owner, I just love it. I work my own hours. I spent most of yesterday out at Selwyn Sports Centre for the primary school's winter basketball tournament, Canterbury Zones. Had my laptop with me, made about probably 10 phone calls in between. So still working.
Yeah.
And then I sat there for a couple of hours at night, had my dinner, and just got back to people and wrote some reports. And I can do that. I don't need to be anywhere at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. I'm always available, but at the same time, I'm always available for my wife and kids. And I go to, I think my 12-year-old's getting a bit sick of it, but we go to every single sporting event. We're there. We need a coach. I'll do it. I crash course in basketball. I'll do it. School camp. I'll do it. So I just had to promise my son I won't be wanting to go to his school camp for his final year because he's at that age. Whereas my daughter still loves it. And we're the parents that are always, we always carpool, and we take the kids out to the duathlons, to the basketball. We're the go-to for all of the teachers because they know that we're going to be there. That's why we've got a 7-seater car. We've only got 2 kids. But I love that. I didn't have that growing up because my father had passed away young. So we're like, we probably maybe overcook it if you ask my son. But we love being part of that. Yeah. We love seeing them perform, doing their sports, doing their hip-hop dance. And I'm quite often after 3 o'clock, I'm taking kids to sports and volunteering for this, that, and I love that.
So your business is a vehicle to allow you to do that,
100%. 100%, yeah.
And then you have the passion for helping those people get their result.
Yeah.
Hey, Damien, you've got a couple of books there, and one of the things I love talking to business owners about is what they're reading. And tell me about those books, because I liked the first one.
Yep.
My sales manager back in the day was in the corporate. He told me to read that, and it was a really, really interesting read.
So the first one, Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah.
This was actually given to every single staff member when we're at Mitsubishi Electric.
Oh, wow.
MD, Ron Woodrow, who still owns the business, learned a lot from Ron. And it was during a time in the 90s when we were going through quite a lot of change within the business.
Yeah.
So it's a very easy read.
Still relevant today, too.
Yeah, large print, short, small pages. But it's all about not being too resistant to change. It's all about being open to change and understanding why there is sometimes the need for change. Yeah. And I think in today's world, it's more relevant than ever. And it's certainly not, as I say, this was in the 90s. I don't know when it was exactly written.
Interesting. I worked in the corporate world, and one thing I constantly saw was change. every 6 months someone is tweaking with something, and there was redundancies happening, there was people going in and out, and this is why they gave this book to a lot of the people in and around that kind of, because you know how to deal with it. You know, I think one of the key things today, and I was talking to my team about this morning, especially in people industries, is one of the ways to be more successful is how you deal with feedback. Today, you know, if you can deal with feedback really well and not take it too personally, you'll actually do really well. Especially we're in a creative industry, right? We get feedback all the time.
Of course, yeah.
So you can take that, like you can take it the wrong way a lot of the times, right? So I really kind of see that's kind of maybe a little bit even a modern version of this, but what a great read, and probably one of my favorite people, Zig Ziglar.
Zig Ziglar. This is one of his books. See You at the Top. Was written quite a while ago. I was very, very fortunate in attending a seminar that Zig Ziglar, and he's American, anyone with the name Zig Ziglar had to be American, but I attended a seminar in the, must have been the mid-80s. He came to Wellington, where I was living at the time.
So good.
And it, as I was saying earlier, kind of changed my life. I was mid-20s. I was in a middle management, quite senior role for a 26, 27-year-old. And it just kind of helps you train the way you think. How to, if you don't know how to be that positive person, if you don't know how to put a positive spin on things, or if you can't rise above the everyday morass that you can get involved in, particularly as a young man in an older people's world, because I had sales managers twice my age reporting to me. This was gold. It was gold. But you've got to be open to it. It's probably more for a younger, say up to 40, 45-year-old read, because I think it will, if you go into it with
just under their bracket.
Have a read of it, mate. If you go into it with an open mind and being prepared to actually take on board stuff without writing it off or saying, oh, that's just bollocks. Well, actually, it's not.
No.
It's a way of being.
Yeah.
And there were certain behaviours that I had to really work on that I got from this book, and it's helped to make me, I think, the reasonable business person that I am today, but more than that, the reasonable person.
Yes.
And my kids and my wife used to get absolutely sick of me. Every time they'd walk out the door of a day, I'd say, be the best version of you today. You only get one chance at today.
So good. I say it to my kids, or I say it to my boy.
I didn't bring any books, sorry.
Mate, one interesting thing. We have one of our core values in the business is called Be Team Focused, right? And I actually have this on my website. That's what I was just looking about. Zig Ziglar said it best, and I wrote this here. You can have, and this is one of my principles of my life.
Okay.
Okay. You can have everything in your life that you want if you just help other people get what they want first. And I learned that from Zig.
Yep.
And it's a guiding principle in my life. And there's another one by John Rome, don't wish you were easier, wish you were better. And for me personally, I just realised one day that I could have whatever I wanted if I just help other people get what they want first. And I think it's lost on the world today because of, I would say Afterpay is probably a big part of the problem. People don't have to wait to get what they want anymore. They can
after paying a restaurant.
Mate, it's incredible how,
insane,
but those philosophies, really, I think are getting lost in today's, because, they are really well grounded. And I think reading's become one of those things. It's not really a thing anymore.
My kids love reading. They do. I love reading. I don't read business books, but I do have 2 books that I was going to bring, but I forgot.
What were they, Sam?
I love biographies.
Oh,
okay.
Yes,
so I love biographies. So the first one, it's the first one written about Charlie Upham. I think it's called Mark of the Lion. Gee whiz, every single kid at high school should read that book.
Okay.
He is an absolute legend. If you hear what he got up to in World War II, how brave he was, how courageous, cruising around the horse with dysentery, hadn't eaten, and he was, and some of the stories you would think they were made up for a movie.
Yeah.
Incredible Cantabrian, and it just, if you want kids to learn about resilience, you can read that book.
All right. Yeah.
The next one is a bit different, but LeBron James's biography, absolutely sensational. I got that from my daughter for Christmas, and I read it, and it was just probably the best biography I've ever written. The guy's an absolute legend. It just followed him from growing up and his decision to move from like the Cavaliers to the Heat, and gee whiz, that, from them burning his jerseys and for the Cavs. And just, you were talking about Magic Johnson, and he was told to surround himself with good people.
Yeah.
LeBron did that himself with his, whatever it was called, the Type 4.
Yeah.
And these are teenage boys that he hung around with when he was playing basketball for a school that he went into, a Catholic school. And he's still got those people around him today. And they've turned into multi-millionaire sports agents because he knew that he could trust these guys. They followed him and they're still there right through and through. And it's just an incredible story just about how his focus was his family. He made every decision for his family. And, it was a business decision. He loved basketball, but he was always wanting to set himself up when basketball finishes, if he's ever going to retire. But just an absolute incredible read. So I just, love biographies, and the lessons that you can learn about people is great.
I think that's one of like I always say, success leaves clues, but so does failures. Success is there for you to learn, right? And to go in and hear what those, I just love picking up little things. I'm reading a book at the moment called Belonging, by a guy called Owen Easterwood, and I've had it on my shelf there for a long time, and I was given it and told to read it, and I never read it. And then a person who's very successful said, "Oh, have you read that book?" And I was like, "No, I hadn't read it." And I started reading it, and I was like, "Holy crap! I'm reading this at the right time." And Belonging is all about your roots and where you came from, and it talks a lot about high professional sports teams and where they get their grounding from. A lot of it came from the All Blacks. A Kiwi guy that wrote the book. He was a lawyer, but he's also based in the UK, and he's worked with some of the biggest sporting teams in the world. But he talked a lot about how it was really interesting where people come from and how people relate in certain ways to certain behaviours. And there was a great story about a guy who he ended up being an All Black, but he left New Zealand. His father died, and he left New Zealand, and then he ended up going in the war. And it was crazy that he got put into the situation over in where the war was, and these generals told them to go fight, and they lost about so many hundreds of thousands of people. And he came back to New Zealand, but he always remembered the people's names of who sent him into battle. Yeah. And he came back in New Zealand. He got a medical discharge. And luckily they didn't send him to a sunny side. They sent him to go back to his family. And these two guys who owned a business saw him one day and said, "Hey, do you want to get a job?" So all of a sudden he started working for them, and then they invited him to come to the rugby team. 3 weeks later, he's playing the top rugby team for the area up in the North Island. 6 months later, he's playing for provincial. The year later, he's playing for the All Blacks. 2 years later, he's over in the UK, looking the general in the hand that sent him to war, because the All Blacks team is meeting the English rugby team, and he's before the game shaking hands with these, and he never said a word. And then he met Winston Churchill, who was basically the orchestra of it. Like it was phenomenal how the resilience and all this sort of stuff comes together. And I just think learning that sort of stuff. I didn't read books at school. Told what to read. It was boring. But now I'm passionate about learning this sort of stuff. So 4 great reads. Thank you for sharing those. Hey guys, this has been interesting. I'm going to put you on the spot because we've been going an hour, and I know you guys are busy. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I want to give you. I want 5 things, and we kind of discussed them already. But 5 things I need to do to sell my business. And I want you to give me left field things. I don't want you to give me. I want the things that are going to really stack the value in my business.
Crikey, you don't want much, do you?
No.
Growth always helps. So, and it's been difficult. A lot of businesses, April to July, we've seen a lot of numbers. They're not too crash shot. We can help that. But you can't argue against year-on-year growth. Okay. It is just sensational. And we love putting graphs in our information memorandums, and I love it when that graph's doing that. Otherwise, I don't put it in there. It just looks fantastic. Recurring revenue. Not everyone can do it. I know you do. Accountants are doing it quite often. I'm dealing with our VoIP, telecommunication provider now, which is a cracking business. All recurring revenue. Banks love that for obvious reasons. You've got no working capital requirements because you're paid in month 1. If there's any way or shape or form you can get your customers to pay you monthly, then that's a huge one. That makes it very popular with buyers, bankers, and accountants. Good mate of mine. Good mate of mine.
He said to me, Scott, and I was looking at starting another business, and he said with his security company, he said, look, sell once, get paid again and again and again.
Yep.
And that just made his business so valuable. And people that were coming to them all the time wanting to buy their business, and they were just saying no because they didn't need to, because they just kept, you know. And that was a really interesting one. So year-on-year growth, recurring revenue. What was your third one?
What was my third one?
I think you only had two.
I think you only had two. I think you're just trying to pad it out.
Trying to pad it out.
Yeah, I was just getting my first two in there. So that was like the last three.
I'll tell you what, they were really good though, because focusing on year-on-year growth, you know, like we can all sell a business, but let's sell a business like going somewhere, right? I think that's the real.
You're making more money at the same time, so it's kind of a no-brainer.
I think one of the big ones is genuine opportunity for the future, because the buyer is going to be excited about where they can take the business. No one buys a business to want to. Some people are happy as a yield play and they just keep it rolling. But most people fancy themselves to grow it. So look for opportunity. At least do a wee bit of market research. And if you don't want to start to develop that, have it there as a genuine potential for growth. Again, people love that. And I think that this isn't rocket science, but the more you can pull yourself out of the front line, you know, that is critical. I know it's old and it's normal and it's expected, but it's probably the single biggest thing. Do not be the bottleneck.
I like what you said at the start. Do not be the bottleneck. You said about the bottleneck. You guys said that, and I went straight away to Tony Jenkins always tells me delegate. You know, and I've got a great saying: employ your weakness. You know, if you've got something, but then also employ your strength too. We just employed a salesperson to come to the business here. You know, and that's the strength that I love. But at the same time, I don't want to be the bottleneck. You know, I don't want to be that bottleneck. And I think that's really important. And it kind of comes down to a bit of a mindset too, like being willing to let go is a big part of that, right?
Well, and you need to be that at its most extreme when you let go to the new owner. So and look, I personally find it a bit hard to delegate. It's really easy now because I'm not delegating to anyone. I'm doing it, and Sam's doing it, and that's great. But that was probably one of my biggest challenges when I was in the corporate world. Was actually, it's just easier and quicker if I do it myself, which is really bad thinking. You know, so delegation is important.
I think I'll add one more to your list, is employ technology.
Oh, big time. Systemize.
Like, let's look. If I was a business owner today, I'd be saying to you guys, hey, where can I employ technology to get an upside? Because I reckon if you looked at most businesses, they're probably not using enough technology to actually do some of that automation in the background, some of the not heavy lifting, but day-to-day stuff where they could probably get 2, 3, 4 hours back a week, etc.
So it's a huge chunk of change. I sold a business just after COVID, import distribution, absolute cracker of a business. The guy had run it for 30 years, and he basically run everything on paper ledger. So no accounting software, everything was written down. Stock was on, I think he upgraded to using Excel, fantastic for stock. The owners were expats moving back from the UK. They came down, did the hibernation thing in a hotel, came in and bought it, and straight away they just put in zero. They put in, I think it was Vend, and boom. And that guy, he literally said to me, "I work full time." A, he didn't. He only worked about 30 hours a week because he was an ACRR on his yacht. And B, you could actually do what he was doing in about 15 hours a week.
Wow.
And that's what the new owners soon realised. And he's like, I'm not going to implement that. And that was a genuine opportunity for a new owner. And I wouldn't normally recommend that. I normally say get it up and running. But for a guy like this, he came to us. He literally wants to retire. And fantastic business, and they got that humming.
And he probably, didn't want to. He didn't have the skills to do it. No, I reckon that is the opportunity for business owners to look at that play and go, okay. Because if you want year-on-year growth, well, technology could be a big part of it, right?
Sure.
Or it could be getting you out of the bottleneck. Just interesting though, how does someone get themselves out of that bottleneck? What do you advise to people? Or do you advise any of that? Or do you...
Sometimes they may need some independent advice. They may need someone to actually look down with a bit of a helicopter independent view and say, have you thought about doing this? Or have you thought about doing it that way? Because sometimes you're so immersed in the forest, you can't see the wood for the trees. And don't be afraid to get external help. Or at least... And again, you've then just got to find the right person, and that comes from referrals, really.
Asking around.
Asking around. Whether it's your accountant or whether it's someone they can recommend.
I think a good starting point is for them to get to the end of the day, or even hourly, do a timesheet. Business owners will never do a timesheet. And so you can look back and go, this is exactly what I did for the last 12 hours. Yeah. And then you do that over the course of a week, a month, and you sit down with your accountant or your advisor, go, what could I not have to do out of this? What could I delegate? And once they write it all down and look at it and they're going, geez, I spent an hour on some crappy admin task when I could have just passed that on.
Yeah,
$10 problem. Yeah, 100%. What were you saying in that seminar? It's find yourself an hour saving through AI and stuff like that. So even a couple of hours means that they might get home earlier to their wife or their kids, which is going to be a game changer at home, which is important. Just write everything down you do, and then you'd be surprised at the stuff you look at and go, that actually wasn't important. That wasn't important. I could have spent longer doing that, which would have actually brought in more revenue. And so just quantify what you're doing, because most people don't. They're just, I'm busy doing this, the phone's ringing. And some people are really proud of that craziness. But the reality is it's actually not a good thing, and it's not going to help you sell your business.
Wear it like a badge. But
100%. I'm so busy. It's like,
Hey guys, this has been a fantastic chat. Where do people get hold of you, and what's the process for you to get involved in initially if someone's looking to sell the business?
Well, we've got our website, www.tabak.co.nz. All our contact details are there. We're both on LinkedIn, Sam Cherry, Damien Fahey.
Nice.
And if someone wants to start learning about the process, Sam and I both love catching up for a yarn. We love a coffee. And
you need to pay though, because these guys working for free, man.
We'll even pay for the coffee. As crazy as that sounds in a session, but no, happy to. We enjoy getting out of the house and talking to people, and that's accountants too. We talk to accountants almost daily who have queries about multiples or got a client. We do that all the time.
So that's a good partnership with you guys and accountants.
Absolutely,
right? Actually, a real win-win.
Yeah,
it's kind of a win-win and a win for their clients too, right? I see. The more you guys talk about that, I can see why you guys have a real, affinity together and working really well. Because one thing I want to come back to this whole thing. If I'm selling a business, I want to know I'm dealing with the right people.
Yeah.
And look, I trust my accountant because I've been with my accountant for so long. If he then recommends, hey, these guys, I know I'm going to be in safe hands. Yeah. And look, I'd rather get told straight, hey, this is what it's worth, and here's the process, versus someone being a bit slicker and going, we could get this, but
what do you want for it this much? We'll go out of that and see what happens.
It's not a good idea, because I'm going to waste my time, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And my time's valuable.
Yeah, and you're going to waste the business owner's time, and they're going to have that false sense of reality of what their business is worth.
What I also love as well is because you value those relationships with accountants, because you've said it quite a few times, is you're going to do a good job because you don't want to let your
100%
partners down.
Credibility is everything. Yes, in this game.
We never let our referrers down, even if it's something that's not for us. We'll give them some help. We'll give them some
spend
support.
An hour and give them some guidelines of what we think they should do. We refer certain industries to other competing brokers because we know that they do a better job than us, and they're very appreciative of that too, because we know that's the best thing for the business owner. And at the same time, that the accountant's going to go, wow, they really went above and beyond for no return. But it's just part of, we like to call it part of marketing, isn't it? Really?
I think this is why you guys, this book resonates with you, and you should read this, Sam.
I'm going to have to read it before I'm 45.
Part of their philosophy here is value in advance. Give value in advance before anyone ever gives you any money. I got that from his book. I got it from Jim Ryan. And it kind of, what you're doing, Damien and Sam, now fits that philosophy,
Correct.
Which is kind of cool. Man, it's been a great chat. So we're going to put all the details of these guys in the show notes anyway. So if you want to contact them, definitely go and check them out on LinkedIn and start having some conversations. I always believe if you want to, if you want to do something and know something, you should take the time to get educated and like just start the process. If you think you're going to be selling your business, start the process now, because if these guys said things change, right? So at least start preparing yourself. And you already heard, I just put them on the spot. They gave us 5 great ways to actually get more value rather than just the stock standard answers. So guys, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. I know this is going to be a great episode. Hey guys and girls, thank you for listening. Another great episode. I really appreciate it. Do me one favor, just share this podcast. Tag me in like Richard Gardner did the other day, sharing the podcast on LinkedIn and helping that ripple effect of helping other people. So till the next episode, thanks for your time and have a great day.